Welcome back to the 14th online episode of Peacetime, hosted on alternating Sunday mornings by PeacePoint and on alternating Thursday evenings by DIMC Information, with myself, Ven.Nicholas Thanissaro, live streaming from Dhammakaya International Meditation Center in Azusa, California. Today's session will be about an hour and 10 minutes long and will consist of a 25-minute talk and 20 minutes of meditation, finishing up with 25 minutes of conclusion, answers to viewer questions submitted in advance, and news updates. Last time you saw me, we looked at a rust in the mind. The topic for the Dhamma talk today will be cultivating contentment to overcome greed in the mind. Again, this session I would like to encourage you to send in any questions you have by emailing me at peacetimequestions@gmail.com so that I can have a shot at answering them next time round. And just to avoid any confusion this lesson, let me just spell that out. The email address is paeacetime.questions@gmail.com, as shown on the slide. This session we will look specifically at the symptomology of the defilement of greed. Last session I defined greed as wanting to get something or steal from others given the opportunity. It comes from the same cluster of defilements that causes sensual thought and also stinginess. However, we will examine both of those other subcategories specifically in a future session. If you can remember, when greed is compared to hatred or ignorance, it has the attribute of not being particularly damaging, but taking a long time to recover from. Greed and its related defilement of desire are attachments to things that we like, generating unhealthy lust, passion, or desire. It is like a form of hunger in the mind, but unlike a regular hunger, it doesn't go away even if we get what we want. To give an example, consider the habits of a mangy stray dog. If you give it scraps, at first it will be glad of the gift and will finish everything you give it. That is genuine hunger for something it needs. However, if you continue feeding it scraps for 7 days, if there's no meat in it, then it will lose interest in the food. That is where greed kicks in, where the dog becomes driven by want instead of need. If you continue giving it better food, in no time it will be climbing on the table, sneaking the food off your plate. If you come across this sort of stray dog, you would have no alternative but to chase it away because of its greed, because it is a dog of the sort that never knows enough. It doesn't only happen to dogs. If you stand in front of the mirror and see what you look like when your eyes light up, when you're licking your lips and drooling with obsession for something that you'd like to get, then that is what greed personified looks like in a human being. If we were to describe the action of greed according to the dynamics of meditation, we can say that whenever you see something that captures your attention, it will pull your mind away from the center of your body. If your mind is away from the center of the body for long enough, the thoughts that follow will be the thoughts of possessiveness and plans for how to own the thing for yourself, even if it's by dishonest means. Once we get attached to something, when it comes to time for being parted from it, we experience great suffering. Bereavement and breakups are usually emotionally painful. That's not to say that we should not love, but we need to learn to love without being pulled off center. In general, there are 4 types of things that are the objects of people's greed: power, possessions, food, and promiscuity. Greed for power means those who get elected to positions of political power may not be satisfied and will be more interested in furthering their political career than in serving the people who elected them. Even as a powerful political figure, you cannot ignore greed because if your mind is overcome by it, you can end up in jail because of corruption. Greed for possessions means those who already have pearls will want rubies. Once they get rubies, they will want diamonds and so forth. Someone who used to live in a shack will want to get a house. Once they get a house, they'll want a mansion. Once they get a mansion, they want a palace. Once they get a palace, they'll still want a private kingdom to go with it. Greed for food, or gluttony, means that although some people are not interested in power or possessions, they will do anything to get their hands on tasty treats to eat. Greed in terms of promiscuity means a person will start a new family in every new town they visit. It's ironic that in the modern day, greed is something that is celebrated in many sectors of mainstream society. I came across the advertising slogan on the internet which read, "Greed is good." Can you believe such a brazen statement would impress potential buyers? Any idea what it's advertising? Actually, it was an advertisement for Lynx deodorant, where, by having the right brand of deodorant, apparently you can attract lots of scantily dressed women to follow you around everywhere. So, the logic behind this deodorant is that triggering desire is good because you'll have a lot of women following you around like zombies. Greed appears in many places. There was a corporate cartoon I came across where one guy is asking another, "Did I miss much in the meeting?" And his colleague tells him, "Nothing much, they're just saying that greed is good, but not as good as it used to be." In fact, greed is justified as good because it ensures people continue competing in the rat race and conforming with the market forces that drive Western society. So is greed good for us? Encouraging greed is generally justified by the capitalist assumption that if the powerful and the privileged keep on spending greedily, then they will also sustain the lives of others less fortunate than themselves through trickle-down sharing. In a 2005 paper by Cassill and Watkins called The Mogul Games, those economists even went as far as to credit greed as being an evolutionary strategy for survival of the fittest. No matter what the economists say, inside the mind, greed has negative consequences for our sense of peace. And this is the point of view that we want to elaborate on further today, especially the way in which greed tends to escalate. Would you say you were a greedy person? Do we have any shopaholics listening in today, whose overriding philosophy of life is shop till you drop? There was a recent TV documentary about addicts who had to have their credit cards confiscated by their doctor because they couldn't be let loose in a retail store unchaperoned anymore. They were the sort of people who would not go home from the stores until they had maxed out all their credit cards and run up debts for themselves. I'm sure you wouldn't be here meditating if you thought shopping were a more direct route to happiness. Suffice it to say that all categories of holics, whether it be alcoholics, shopaholics, or workaholics, have been thrown off balance by defilements of greed in the mind. In keeping with the usual dynamic of defilements, the process of greed hijacking the mind starts with quite benign emotions, but the severity gradually increases. Greed starts with the benign emotion of mere attraction. For example, we may be sitting in the back of an airplane when they come around with the meal trolley. They announce that the menu today will be a choice of mac and cheese or chicken and rice. So we set our heart on the mac and cheese, at which point it means that we've developed a preference. However, by the time the trolley reaches the back of the plane, they are not asking the passengers about their meal choice anymore. They are just handing out trays of chicken and rice. So you feel really disappointed. If you didn't form a preference in the first place and you just thought to yourself, "I'm hungry, so I'll be glad of anything," you won't be setting yourself up for a disappointment when the trolley arrives. With preferences, there's nothing really up with the mind so far that would cause you to go crazy. But once you get to the point where there is an attraction, to the point you can't just observe something passively, like passing the shop window and thinking that would look nice on someone, but where you start to think, "I want it for myself," then it's as if greed has already got its claws into you on some level. Attraction has upgraded itself to possessiveness, even if you've not taken the item home with you. It is exercising some power over your mind already, and this is what the advertising execs try to leverage when they are trying to sell something to you. If they can get enough people to want more things for themselves, more than they need, and this is how they control your motivation to buy things. But it gets worse. We now move to the level where we move from what is known as a subtle defilement to the level of medium impurities. Just now you wanted something for yourself. It may have been an emotion which you could keep to yourself. You could have had your secret desire for something, and maybe no one else would even know about it. But where you come to the point where you can't keep the desire for something secret anymore, then it has upgraded to the level which is known as open covetousness. Apart from being attracted to something, then you also have lost any shame of embarrassing yourself over it. If you are drooling over something, if your eyes are lighting up when you see something, then the greed has progressed to a point where it's exercising control over even the way you interact with other people. If you don't act on your open covetousness, then it will only cause you problems as far as you haven't got what you wanted yet. But it may cause some people to go on one step further. If they can't get it by honest means, then they will try to use devious means in order to get something. They might not dare to go as far as stealing something yet, but they will use dishonest means to obtain what they want, whether by hook or by crook. You may have the experience of certain acquaintances who come round to your house and drop hints like, "Hey, this loudspeaker system is outdated. You probably won't want this anymore. I'd give it a good home if you don't want it anymore." It's obvious that they would want to get something from you without having to pay for it. They would risk losing a friendship in order to get something they want. Can you see that greed has escalated one step further? Exploitative means may include various sorts of ploys, where a greedy person deceives someone they know or loses their sense of honesty in a business partnership with someone because they have such a strong attachment for something they want to get. It is at this point that greed starts to erode your sense of integrity. And this is starting to come to a point where the greed in you is getting the upper hand. Generally, people will save up their hard-earned money to buy something they want a lot. However, a greedy person will cut corners because they can't get enough to buy it, in an honest way at least. So they attempt to get the earnings in a dishonest way in order to pay for it. A historical example of this sort of thing happening, and one of the reasons that the slave trade could exist for so long, was because people didn't care enough about exploiting other human beings in order to build up their own business empires. On the face of it, they should be compassionate for their fellow human, whether those humans are from another continent or not. But because greed had overwhelmed their sense of conscience, slavery didn't seem like such a bad idea at the time. This is a strength of influence which greed can have over people's minds. The most extreme form of greed, which brings us to the level of serious defilements, where the greed becomes so overwhelming that a person would stop at nothing in order to get their hands on the thing that they want. This would be called desiring things in a dishonest way. At this point, there is an erosion of a person's conscience to a point where they lose their scruples or consideration for others. In conclusion, from someone who likes something, we become someone who is attracted to it. From being attracted to it, we want to own it. From wanting to own it, we will crave it so strongly that we're not interested in anyone who gets in the way of our acquisition. If you just have an attraction or preference for things and want to own them, then it does not throw you too far off balance. However, if you start to entertain infatuation or the thought of cutting corners to get what you want, you start to erode your integrity. As we've seen, it's necessary to examine the symptomology of greed in a very detailed way, so that we can keep up with the changes occurring in our own minds. If we're able to recognize greed arising in our own minds right from the level of attraction and withdraw from a situation before it becomes infatuation or worse. There is a misunderstanding in meditation circles that avoiding greed means giving away all your possessions to have peace of mind. The stereotypic meditator always seems to be someone left with nothing, having done a Marie Kondo on their house, But if it rains, they always come asking to borrow your umbrella, and if they run out of clean clothes, then they come asking to borrow your washing machine. Here I would like to make clear that the possessions are not the problem, but our attitude to them. Monks have few possessions, but the logic behind this is for monks to avoid being a burden on charitable supporters. To use modern terminology, to keep the charity overheads to a minimum. But if you're not a monk, you should not be guilty about being adequately equipped for life and for helping others. However, lay people like monks can observe the working of their mind more closely if their habit is frugality, learning to distinguish between need and want by observing and reflecting carefully how we consume the basic necessities of clothing, food, shelter, and medicine. It is at the point of caring about choices that you can start to break free of the greed in your mind. Speaking from the point of view of a monk, there's a lot of effort put in by a monk's lifestyle to protect monks from having to exercise too many choices. The lifestyle of a monk is designed to minimize choices. For example, when it comes to clothes to wear, it's the same clothes that we wear right from the time we are a new monk to the time that we die as a monk. It's the same sort of clothes that we wear for evening dress, pajamas, working outfit, or formal attire. If you think about how much time you normally spend thinking about what clothes you're going to wear in the morning, unless you're in the army or something, then you can imagine how much mental chatter immediately disappears from your mind when you don't have a choice of clothes anymore. When it comes to hairstyle, then, immediately monks have a very simplified life. With a shaved head, it's not worth bothering even to look in a mirror anymore because, as a monk, there is basically nothing left to look at. As lay people, you have to decide whether you're going to part your hair on the left or on the right, or whether you're going to have your hair curled or long or short, whether you're going to put your hair up or wear it down. For monks, this is just not an issue because monks follow a set of rules that governs the choices and hence the attachments. When it comes to food, then monks, in our tradition anyway, have to take what we're given. So it may be cheap food or it may be expensive food, but it's not the food that you've chosen. Accepting what you're given with gratitude makes you think very differently about food. Instead of being something that is basically entertainment, food becomes something that you have to have enough of merely to fill you and provide enough energy for you to do good deeds in your life. So this is a way of minimizing greed that is imposed externally, but although it comes from the outside, we can start to train the attitudes on the inside of our mind. I should also clarify that it is not antisocial greed if you want to have something you don't have yet, but you plan to earn it by honest means. For example, if you want a new Mercedes and it costs 100k and you save up to buy it, such an emotion is not desiring things in a dishonest way. However, if you are a millionaire but you think to cheat someone else in order to get the Mercedes you want instead of paying for it, such a defilement is desiring things in a dishonest way. There is nothing much wrong in itself with wanting to obtain things as long as it doesn't cause you to exploit others. If you really want to buy a Mercedes and you save up your salary to buy it, then that's not serious greed. However, if you cut corners to get involved in corruption to boost your earnings, then that is submission to the defilement of greed, and eventually it will lead to greed for things without end. So, before we turn to look at the antidotes for greed in the mind, let us set aside a few moments for ourselves to meditate. So at this time we settle ourselves for some meditation. If you would like to find a comfortable sitting position for yourself now as you listen to my instructions. So if you'd like to start by settling yourself into a comfortable position for the meditation, closing your eyes very gently, in much the same way you'd close your eyes to go to sleep. Breathe deeply to yourself, maybe for 2 or 3 breaths. When you breathe in, try to notice the refreshing air from around you. As you breathe out, you may feel that you're letting go of any previous worries or concerns that you may have had. Try to feel your body is merging with the atmosphere around you. And for good measure, we do what's known as a body scan, which means starting at the top of our head and working our way gradually downwards, relaxing the muscles first of all of our forehead, of our eyebrows and our eyelids. The way we close our eyes is quite important. We try to close our eyes in much the same way we might close our eyes to go to sleep. So not squeezing our eyes tightly closed, just letting our upper and lower eyelashes touch gently together. From there, we allow the muscles of our face to become soft. We relax our jaw, taking special care not to clench our teeth together. Before moving on down to relax our neck and letting our shoulders drop to their natural height. Moving on down, we relax our arms, our forearms, and then our hands and fingers, so that even the way our hands rest in our lap is as light and gentle as possible. Continuing on down, we relax all the muscles of our torso, chest, trunk, and abdomen. Relaxing both legs, all the way down to our feet and our toes. Until no part of our body remains with any sort of stress or tension anymore. If we do notice any tension remaining, then we adjust our posture to minimize it. Ideally, our whole body will be so relaxed that it will feel as if it melts away into the atmosphere around us, in much the same way that our body might disappear, leaving only our sense of awareness, our sense of feeling on the inside of us, that warmth and well-being. As if we are totally connected with the world around us. At which point we can turn our attention to focus instead on our state of mind. State of mind which is somewhere within the space of our own body. And in order to relax our mind in preparation for the meditation ahead, we let go temporarily of all the worries and concerns in our everyday life. Any thoughts of work, friends, family, studies, of the stresses and strains of our contemporary times. Any regrets from your past, or any plans for the future. Keeping our mind 100% in the present moment and on the task in hand. reminding ourselves that we have nowhere to go and nothing to do. And this is the real purpose, that we are here together online meditating. So we focus in the present moment while conjuring up a sense of happiness and joy in the mind. For some of you, happiness and joy may come immediately to mind. If not, then cast your attention back to a time in your life when you felt truly happy, thinking not so much about the actual situation as the feeling it gave you. Maybe when you were able to do something nice for another person. But in helping that person, you also felt good about yourself on the inside, with a warm, fuzzy feeling. And thinking now of that warm, fuzzy feeling on the inside, it will return to you, almost like tiny particles of happiness and joy inside you. And you allow it to grow and spread within yourself until it fills the whole of your body and mind, filling you up to the point that there's no space left in your mind for any other sort of thought. And when you feel relaxed and refreshed, both in body and in mind, very gently and using no effort at all, you can imagine your whole body to be nothing but a hollow cavity, an empty space with no organs or tissues, muscles or bones. Alternately, you might think of your body as being like a transparent bubble with nothing on the inside. Others who've been meditating longer may have the feeling as if your whole body has disappeared altogether. As if you are at the center of some great empty space, a space of your own creation. Or whatever your experience of that inner space, now would be the time to remember back once again to that picture of the shining sun, which you had a few moments ago. A bright sun may be orange in color or yellow, white or gold, shining with a cool, clear light. Doesn't matter if the picture is not very clear. Even if it's vague or fuzzy, you can accept it, remembering that it's not your eyes that you're using to see the picture, but your mind itself. The nature of seeing with the mind is that pictures tend to start out vague and gradually get more well-defined in their own time. So work with whatever you have and allow that inner picture to make its way slowly downwards within the space of your body, almost as if you were slowly breathing the object down to the point of the deepest breath, or as if you were gently swallowing the object down to the pit of your stomach. In either case, it will bring you to a point at the very center of your diaphragm. The point number 7 on the diagram we saw a little earlier. The very center of the body, the center of gravity of the body. A place which is particularly calming for the mind to be. And We gently maintain our awareness at the center of the body by means of that inner picture as continuously as we can for as long as we can, not letting our attention slip away anywhere else if we can help it. We find our awareness wanders off. Each time we realize, we just bring our awareness back again to the center of the body as before, for as many times as it takes for the mind to start to settle at the center of the body. As for the possible problem of there being thoughts in the mind, if the thoughts are at a low level, we try to ignore them, not giving them the time of day, treating them like unwanted guests, and if ignored for long enough, will gradually go home all by themselves without even a confrontation. Thoughts arise in the mind, we try not to elaborate on them, we let them die down into silence. Because beneath that superficial layer of the thoughts, there is a deeper awareness within the mind that will allow us to access the deeper processes, things like our gut feelings, our intuition, our wisdom, all of which are already within us, but they're usually obscured by the superficial working of the mind. This is the point where we start to chase away some of those clouds, some of the things that obscure the deeper working of the mind. When working with the mind, we need to be both patient and gentle, not letting the mind be too forceful in the way it rests at the center of the body. Because sometimes we are used to hurrying, forcing, competing with others, trying to get to a possible goal or what we imagine to be progress in meditation. But what we find is that the more relaxed we are about the meditation, the more quickly we will move towards our possible progress. It's almost as if the less we care about progress, then the easier it will come. And as for being gentle with the mind, well, sometimes it's useful to point out a few metaphors for just how gentle we need to be. Sometimes you can talk about the gentleness of a feather touching upon the surface of some water, so gentle that it doesn't even create a ripple on the surface. Another possible metaphor is that of threading a needle, where you really need to be careful, gentle, in order to get that thread to the eye of the needle at all. It's the same sort of gentleness that we need when practicing meditation. So we cultivate our mind lightly and gently on track at the center of our body, each to our own practice in silence for a few more moments now, until we come to time for some loving kindness meditation together. Don't forget if your mind wanders off onto other things. Each time you realize, simply bring your attention back again to the center of the body as before. Keep on bringing the mind back to the center of the body for as long as it takes for the mind to build up that sense of being at the center of the body almost by second nature. Almost as if there's a stickiness that keeps the mind in place at the center of your body, where it's contented to remain there rather than slipping away anywhere else. As for the thoughts, let them die down into silence. Only using the mantra if the thoughts are really persistent. Otherwise, notice the spaces between the thoughts. And as time goes on, you'll find that the spaces between the thoughts are more frequent than the thoughts themselves. Until at a certain point in the meditation, there will be a sense of unification at the center of yourself. As if all your mental faculties are drawn to the center of your body, where there is perception, memory, thought or cognition, all at the center of the body, as if that were the center of your mind. So we continue to maintain our awareness in this way for a few more moments in silence until we come to time for our loving kindness meditation. Sabba Buddhanupavena, Sabba Dhammanupavena, Sabba Sankhanupavena, Sattha Soti Bhavantu Te. So if you'd like to come to the end of your meditation for today, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position and gently finish your practice. Each time you sit down to meditate, it's like going into battle with the things in your mind that are preventing you from becoming calm or still. And one of these is the defilement of sense desire. So, let's turn now to the subject of contentment, which is the main antidote to the greed we are talking about today. Contentment doesn't mean contentment with shoddiness or choosing to overlook danger in small things. Contentment means not losing sleep over things that don't really make a difference to one's progress on the spiritual path. If you have a car, it doesn't really matter what color it is or what brand, but if it doesn't start in the morning, then that means that the car is not fulfilling its true purpose. So we cannot afford to be content with that. The sort of contentment we are interested in has three components: being content with what you have, being content with what you get, and being content with what is appropriate to you. Being content with what you have means not being jealous of anyone with a better status than you. You need to accept how you are. To quote the eternal wisdom of Lady Gaga's mum, there's nothing wrong with loving who you are and using what you have to be the very best you can. There is a story about a wealthy businessman who was horrified to see a fisherman sitting beside his boat playing with a small child. And I should say that Buddhists generally do not condone the fishing industry as right livelihood, but that is not the point of this story here. But back to the story, the businessman asked the fisherman, "Why aren't you out fishing?" "Because I thought," the fisherman replied, "because I caught enough fish already for one day." So the businessman says to him, "Why don't you go and catch some more?" And the fisherman responded, "Well, what would I do with them?" The businessman proposed, "Well, you could earn more money. And then with the extra money, you could buy a bigger boat, go into the deeper waters and catch more fish. And then you would make enough money to buy nylon nets. With the nets, you could buy even more fish, and so you could catch even more fish and make more money. And with that money, you could own 2 boats or maybe 3 boats, and eventually you could have a whole fleet of boats and be rich like me." "And then what would I do?" asked the fisherman. "Then," said the businessman, "you could really enjoy life." And the fisherman looked at the businessman with a confused look on his face and asked, "Well, what do you think I'm doing now?" So in conclusion, we cultivate contentment with what we have. And in order to do that, then we need to learn to count our blessings. Secondly, apart from being content with what you have, you need to be content with what you receive. You should be accepting of the fact that there are sometimes ups and downs in life, and you should expect that. If you can do that, then you will be content within yourself. Your happiness shouldn't have to depend on the things outside of yourself. Pragmatically speaking, the more one meditates, the more one feels insulation against the vicissitudes of the outside world, because the nature of the outside world is like a roller coaster. Sometimes you have good times, sometimes you have bad times. Sometimes you get a promotion, sometimes you get fired. Sometimes you have a lot of money to invest in Bitcoin, sometimes you get your fingers burned on the stock exchange. But if your mind goes up and down every time there are changes in life, then you would not be a very stable person. Ironing out your reactions to life's roller coaster will bring you closer to contentment. The more you meditate, the more the mind will have that feeling of contentment in spite of what is happening around you. When you're new to meditation, that is not yet the case. The quality of your mind is still dependent on what is happening to you in the outside world. But the more your meditation deepens, the more distance you have from the ups and downs of the outside world. You can choose not to let the outside world affect you. It will help if you don't let yourself feel over the moon when things seem to be going well, and if you don't let yourself despair when things seem to be going wrong. And you'll gradually realize that on the inside, you have an increasingly robust sense of stability as your refuge. In this connection, there is a story the Venerable Dattachiwo used to tell about the experience of a Thai minister of commerce. The minister came from a wealthy family, and he shared 2 events he encountered on the same day which highlighted the importance of contentment. He left his home one morning and passed a beggar on the street. In his family, there was a tradition that they would never turn away any request for help. Of course, how much they helped someone in need depended on the situation, but they would never refuse another person help outright. He would normally not think twice about giving a beggar a few pennies, but that day in his pocket he had no loose change. He had to open up his billfold, where the smallest note was a $5. So he gave a $5 bill to the beggar, and the beggar was so happy that he bowed down on the pavement, or maybe that should be the sidewalk, at the feet of the minister. And the beggar exclaimed that he had been a beggar since he was a child, and today was the first time in his life he had met someone so generous to give him a $5 bill. The beggar's eyes shone with appreciation. and the beggar's delight gave the minister a certain cheerfulness with which to start his day. When the minister reached the ministry, however, he met a bank manager with a pained expression on his face. The minister asked whether the banker was ill, and the banker confessed, "I'm so upset, I haven't slept all week. I told my son to order a product that was bound to be scarce from the market right from early in the year, but my son didn't believe me at first, so he delayed the order. Only the first order ended up being ahead of the competition. For the second and third lots, we lost our market share. My son should have had a profit of 100 million this year, but because he hesitated, he only managed a profit of 60 million. We have lost 40 million, which we could have had." The minister expressed his condolences and went into his office, but that day he could hardly get any work done because he was busy musing about the ways of the world. A beggar who is happy all day with a $5 bill, and a banker who cannot sleep because he only got a profit of 60 million. He sat and wondered whether, even if he managed to achieve miracles as a Minister of Commerce, whether anyone would actually be happier as a result. Last of all, you need to be content with what is appropriate. There was once a hobo who bought a lottery ticket and miraculously hit the jackpot. When the hobo heard how much he'd won, he had a heart attack and died. A second person went to collect the money, but as they had never had any experience of looking after money, they died in the ensuing quarrels between various friends and relatives who appeared out of the woodwork for a share of the money. You have to know what is appropriate or inappropriate for yourself. There are many other stories of so-called lucky lottery winners who went on to be destroyed by their newfound wealth. And this is probably why Mahatma Gandhi warned about the danger of wealth that is unearned, going as far as to put it on the list of 7 deadly social evils. When you are trying to define what is appropriate to you, you need to consider 3 criteria: appropriateness to your financial status, appropriateness to your capability, and appropriateness to your social standing. Appropriateness to one's financial status might mean not building a huge air-conditioned house you cannot afford and having to take out a huge mortgage. Appropriateness to one's capability might mean not choosing a high-backed director's chair if one is not capable of being a director. Appropriateness to one's social status might mean that if something is above or beneath one's social status, it's inappropriate to accept it or own it. If you can overcome your greed and desire, you will achieve contentment with all that you have and all that you receive. It is a very useful state of mind for a meditator because it is the sign of a mind that is still and centered. Apart from this, contentment still has many other advantages for us. You will find you have reduced anxiety about having to strive endlessly for meaningless ends. You will have fewer reasons to run up debts, and you will also have fewer reasons to fall out with your friends, because if you have a good friend and you ask them for something that they love the most, it may cost you your friendship unless they give it to you without your asking. A contented person will inspire love and respect from others and easily achieve peace of mind, as is the basis of progress in meditation. Contentment will also protect us from curtailed lifespan. For example, a farmer who desperately wants to profit from the sale of his crop harvests it before it's ripe. The mature crop lacks the necessary nutrients, so the consumers end up suffering poor health and short life as a result. The real philosophy of overcoming greed is to fight fire with fire and acquire a taste for something more valuable than material wealth by giving rise to higher states of happiness that are the objects of the constructive forms of attachment by practicing generosity, recollection of death, monastic-style moderation, and meditating. If you want to train yourself in generosity, you should give gifts to others habitually, and it will help you to overcome attachment. If you know you are a very greedy person, then you can change yourself gradually by practicing generosity. If you practice generous deeds and attitudes every day, in the end, the craving to get others' possessions will gradually disappear, because every time we're able to give something away, we loosen our ties of attachment for that thing. Secondly, you need to train yourself in the recollection of death in order to put your life properly in perspective. If you recollect death, you will start to realize that you waste most of your life greedily chasing after dreams that are ultimately irrelevant to your existential well-being. We should recollect death regularly, and it will reduce our desires and put the important things in perspective. All you need to do is to remind yourself each morning, today I've survived another day, but there is nothing to guarantee that I'll be alive to see tomorrow. Thus, if anyone has the feeling that their work has taken over their lives, try thinking of your approaching death, and it will prevent you from rushing to work, driving too fast, gulping down your food, and failing to chew your food properly, instead of emphasizing a long and quality life. Thus, don't be like some people who think that talking of death will make you morbid. In fact, the thought of death, applied correctly, will make you think things through more thoroughly, especially about your life. You will overcome the temptation to try to own everything. Instead, you will try to focus on the simple masterpieces of your life. Thirdly, if you can learn from the examples of moderation in the monastic lifestyle, you will be able to find out how much of your mental bandwidth is used up by choices about things that are superficial to your life. If you want to know on the deeper level how greed is working in your mind, try observing just how many choices you make in a single day. It doesn't mean you have to copy monks' lifestyle, but you can learn from the attitudes monks have to learn about yourself. And lastly, to attain contentment, you need to train yourself in meditation. You can cultivate contentment. It's not just something that comes in a passive way. Meditation is something that will help us to develop contentment, to allow us to find sources of contentment from within rather than from the outside world. There is happiness that comes from the inside that goes beyond anything you can find in the outside world by getting things, because it is already a part of you. It is something you can carry around with you. It's something where you can be happy whether you're in the middle of the ocean or the middle of the desert. It doesn't depend on where you are or who you're with. So that is what we're aiming to build up as a result of our meditation. And in fact, it's a very economic way of getting contentment in life because you already have it. You don't have to spend any extra money on it. But other things that tend to help in this direction, if you are able to have your life in perspective, is to know what you are aiming for in life. If this is clear, it will guide you in the direction of knowing what is likely to bring you contentment in life. With meditation, you will find that when the mind becomes more refined, the hunger for power, fame, and wealth will be reduced. It will help you to bring your mind back to the center of the body. And if you come across temptations as a meditator, you'll be better able to maintain your mental equilibrium by quickly bringing your mind back to the center of your body and repeating Samma Arahang before your mind gets entangled. If you meditate regularly like this, your mind will become more independent of the so-called bonfire of vanities, and you'll be able to discern the true nature of your work and of your life and recognize what is worth doing and what is not. In conclusion, don't be content with remaining greedy. Greed for good or liberating things is okay and to be encouraged. If you can remember nothing else from this session, you should remember that it's not the possessions themselves, but our attitude to them, which affects the mind for the better or the worse. Our major concern as meditators should be how to keep ourselves off the slippery slope of wanting more and more negative things without end. You will notice, although we've said how terrible the defilement of greed can be, it's not our place to judge other people for the greed in their minds, their words, or their actions, because that is something only they can do. On the contrary, our prerogative is to sort out the greed in our own thoughts, words, and actions. So now we turn to the part of the live stream where we answer questions sent in by viewers. And this week, the question comes from Malcolm of Woking, Surrey, in England. So here comes the question. If greed and desire is supposed to be bad, does it mean it is wrong to enjoy entertainment and art? Also, would liking meditation be considered an attachment? Hi Malcolm, and thank you for your question. Buddhism, contrary to the beliefs of some, does not neglect or ignore creative art, but has its own rather unique view on the subject. Any form of art is about communication, and the question is, what are you trying to communicate? Art can be something which is very inspiring for people. It can inspire them to do good things, or it can fan the flames of negativity, encouraging them to do things which are harmful. If art serves to awaken people to truth in life or to bring out the best in themselves, then this is something good, and that kind of art should be celebrated. But if art becomes merely a commodity to be auctioned off, where people judge the quality of art by how much will fetch at Sotheby's, or if it's something which reinforces greed, hatred, or delusion, for example, erotic art, then in Buddhism it would be considered that such art should not be celebrated. Art should be something that serves a higher purpose, rather than just being original or creative or art for art's sake. Entertainment is included in the roads to ruin because it has dangers. It tends to waste time that would be better spent doing other things, and it will dull your senses eventually to the things that might otherwise be better uses for your senses. This is particularly clear in the case of kids losing track of time when playing computer games. It's only seen as a danger if it is taken to the extreme of liking entertainment so much that you no longer fulfill your proper duties in life anymore. There's nothing wrong with aesthetics per se, especially aesthetics that show a subtlety of mind or mastery of craftsmanship of various sorts. These are all seen as valuable things in Buddhism. As for meditation being an attachment, on the contrary, meditation is a tool that helps reduce attachment. The way meditation works is that it gives you a new source of happiness. Once you have touched on that sort of happiness, it tends to loosen the attachments that you had for other things, making them seem trivial by comparison. It's like trying to tempt a millionaire with a free gift. The millionaire would just not be interested by this because they already have something which is much greater. And as a meditator, the experience will be similar because things that before you learn to meditate, you took really seriously, which might upset you a lot if you didn't get them, but having touched on something which is far superior in meditation and more deeply satisfying, then those temptations don't hold sway over you anymore. So meditation does help you to overcome attachment. Liking meditation is not an attachment, but helps you to step beyond attachment. So let me finish with a couple of news updates, one about the upcoming Katina ceremony at the temple and the other my usual PSA about the availability of meditation teaching in English. This year, the abbot at DIMC has set the price of Katina funds at the especially low amount of $100 to make it accessible to all, irrespective of their income or lack of it in these unpredictable times. Of course, if $100 is not enough for you, you can donate several funds at once, or maybe dedicate donations in the names of friends or relatives. The Katina funds this year will be put towards the building of the 72nd anniversary meditation building, which is a golden opportunity to cultivate merit for supporting the construction of permanent religious infrastructure. It will be a place that will serve the needs of the monastic and lay communities from all over the United States to come and meditate or perform religious activities together with the aim of perpetuating the study of advanced Buddhist wisdom for thousands of years to come. The known merits for this sort of offering are to have an extended life expectancy, to gain easy access to the upper echelons of society, have a radiant complexion, inspiring the faith of others, to be endowed with happiness both in body and mind, to be endowed with strength and energy, acuity, wisdom, ingenuity, and quick-wittedness, never to have cause to worry about wealth needed in the cultivation of philanthropy, to be loved and protected by humans and non-humans alike, to have a heavenly afterlife destination, ultimately entering upon nirvana. I should warn everyone in advance, since the 100-person public gathering rule for the state of California will still be in place on October 18th, unless you have been personally informed otherwise by temple staff. The best way to participate in Katina this year is to submit your name in advance to either Jenny or Crystal at the phone numbers on the Katina slide you can see now, and reserve yourself a place for Sunday morning of October 18th. We plan to have 2 sittings for the Katina ceremony, a little bit like the watching a movie in a movie theater. You can choose which session you want to attend. Each sitting will have 100 persons each. The first one will be the sitting on the Sunday morning of the October the 18th, and it will be between 9:30 and 11 a.m. and for the general congregation. The second one will be on the Sunday afternoon, but is by invitation only for the VIP benefactors. If it's not convenient for you to attend the temple in person, don't fret, as you can still make a donation, whether it's for Katina or for the COVID Silver Lining Fund, by mailing checks to the temple address or by making a bank transfer. Online transfers can be made by Venmo or Zelle. The special merits arising for those practicing generosity in these times of adversity are that you will have a life free of obstacles and danger. You will gain mastery of all forms of knowledge, prosper in your duties, have special insight into Dharma teachings, attain purity with ease, breaking free of the defilements in the mind. You will gain wealth on worldly, spiritual, and transcendental levels, allowing you to pursue perfections with ease, all the way to the attainment of the utmost Dharma, and the whole temple would like to rejoice in your merit on this occasion. Meditation is particularly valuable in this COVID era to help us cope with the dysphoria of the new normal. And in this respect, here at the temple, although there are still no face-to-face teaching sessions for the interim, you can access Dharma teachings in English at the YouTube channel called Peace Point Meditation, or the Facebook page of Peace Point Meditation, either live on Thursday evenings and Sunday mornings, or on demand after the event. For those of you who have been following my talks, you may be interested to subscribe to a YouTube channel, which I have recently set up in my own name, which can be found by searching for Ven.Nicholas Thanissaro on YouTube, where I've systematized the teachings and cut them down to the bare essentials. Meanwhile, Peace Breaks are broadcast every evening between 7 and 8 p.m. from Friday to Wednesday. For the benefit of families listening in, there's also a special show for children in English known as Shining Stars that goes out between 7:30 and 8 p.m. every Monday evening, with bedtime stories and meditation short enough to keep the attention of younger listeners. Outside of the live streams and on-demand programming, there's also the MindGem app, which you can download for free, allowing you to listen to meditation and Dharma talks in English on your cell phone, even when you are offline. Also, I should add that because the level of airborne particulate matter remains high due to the smoky fallout of the Bobcat fire, the receiving of offerings at the Azusa Temple front garden each day between 9:30 to 11 a.m. has, for everyone's health, been downsized to a monk coming down to the gate by request to receive offerings until the air quality gets back to normal levels again. So this session we've looked at the topic of cultivating contentment to overcome greed in the mind. For my next session online with you, which will, fingers crossed, be a week on Sunday morning and a week on Thursday evening, we'll be moving on to look at the subject of sensual thought. For good measure, I would like to remind viewers that even better than posting thank you or great talk or sadhu in the broadcast comments, you can email your questions about meditation or what you've heard in the lecture to the address peacetime.questions@email.com, as you can see spelled out in the slide. And I will do my best to answer these on my next session. In the meantime, try to stay healthy, avoid recklessness or complacency in the face of the virus, maintain a positive mood, speak only positive words, forgive others, extend good wishes to others, and meditate daily. Try to keep up with the escalation of greedy defilements in your mind and develop contentment in the ways I have mentioned and suggested. So today, this is me, Ven.Nicholas, signing off for this session. So long, folks, and stay safe.